Hello and welcome to a brilliant, exciting video of a Blockade Sim match between myself and the lovely Avienda. Now, the early phase of the match was decided by a competition for this stretch of rind that took us to the main cluster of the map. Now, in the heat of the moment, I unfortunately ignore my instincts and lose this battle, so the initial advantage, as you see, will go to Avienda, and she's well on her way to the points. Now, in hindsight, what I probably should have done is a move that basically just accounts for all the different possibilities that Avienda could have done. So if I had gone, say, forward, right, and then left, then that would have accounted for the ram that I receive and would have denied her such a large advantage. But bearing in mind this is the first time I've ever been on this map, and that is one of the biggest challenges I find that you face as a blockade navigator, is that you have to recognise the terrain and use the terrain as fast as you can. Okay, so now I was in a losing position. I had to make sure that the loss was as minimal as I could. So I tried to plot a course that grabbed as many points as I could on my way to catch up with Avienda. And my top priority was to take away her incline, stop her gaining points over me. So even if that meant a couple of shots, which is what you will see in a moment, I have to get to the central hotspot part of that cluster as fast as I can. And that is going to be a general recurring theme throughout this video. You will see whenever one of us gets sunk, our top priority is always to reach one of the hotspots of the cluster as soon as we can and basically stop the other person from gaining those points. Here I clearly didn't quite seem to know what I was doing on the last move, so whenever in doubt, shoot. Now unfortunately I was in doubt about just about everything on this upcoming move. So one thing I definitely learned from this match was when I'm new to a cluster, try and avoid the complicated parts of the map. Simplify your decision process. So I very quickly sort of start panicking. I predict the first movement and maybe the second movement. Then I realised that I couldn't continue my thought process, and I didn't get my guns in properly. Avienda managed to get a couple of shots. And also, very importantly, both of us actually strayed completely off points. That was, we've not completely lost the flags, but that was a very bad move. Okay, so once I made that blunder, I was close to sinking. So here I decided to go for a bit of a risk, because quite frankly, I had lost. So unless I managed to get a bit lucky, I threw in the hat flag. Or the hat, rather, Avienda had won this one. Avienda, on the other hand, made a very smart choice, and she decided to play it safe. That's what I find is if you are winning, then you always want to go for the safe move, trade some shots. Whereas if you're losing, you want to try and get a bit of an advantage, and basically get more damage in than you receive. Okay, so I'm just going to cut out this part of me returning to the cluster, because I'm sure, as you can see, it's a very simple route up, and I just plotted a course, again, to get to the hotspot of the cluster as fast as I possibly could. Okay, so here you see me going for that hotspot again. I'm trying to get in there as fast as I can and stop Avienda gaining those points. Now, fortunately, I got a bit lucky here and I put 4 shots into Avienda. Unfortunately, following that, I made the blunder that I did before without realising it, of trying to use the whirlpool. And clearly, I still hadn't figured out that I couldn't actually think fast enough yet to deal with the whirlpool. So, we'll see what happens quite clearly here next when I make that blunder again. Now this move was a bit simpler. So while I was still in the whirlpool, I had a very clear strategy on how to exit it. I wasn't trying to stay in the whirlpool and predict all the different ways that Avienda could attack the whirlpool and everything like that. I figured, okay, first of all, she's going to stay still. How do I react to that? What possibilities could she do? And I picked the move that suited that. Now here, I thought that Avienda was quite well off. I forgot the core idea that I had put a lot of damage into her before, and I thought, right, left, she's not going to try it because it was very risky if I went forward on the first move. She's sunk. What I didn't remember was that she was heavily damaged, and basically any move was quite risky for her. And also, what I failed to do, again, similarly at the start of the match, was I didn't choose a move that accounted for the 2 different possibilities that I thought of. So, I don't know, perhaps I should have gone left on the 3rd move, because while I would have still taken some shots, it would have been a lot less painful than it was. So that is absolutely key when you're choosing your moves. You don't just respond to what you think they're going to do. You make sure your plan encompasses all the different possibilities. Okay, so here I'm waiting for Avienda to come back to the cluster, and I always like to position myself very defensively. So you saw on the previous entries, I always took this route up from the bottom, did the few turns. So what I've done here is I positioned my ship to make sure that Avienda can't take that route, because I always like to keep the fight on the edge of the cluster for as long as possible. So if you can do anything to prevent them from coming into the cluster, even if it's for just a turn or 2, those are the points that normally win you the blockade. Because don't forget that this is only a one-on-one match. If this was in the context of a blockade, another ship would either already be here or they'd be on their way to the points right now. So every turn that you can hold on to those points is everything. Here you can see Avienda taking a very interesting and new approach to the cluster, but it still follows that very same principle of whenever you are returning to a cluster, your first priority is to get to that sort of hot spot and that sweet spot. You want to do that as quickly and as safely as possible. So here right now you can see her setting herself up for a safe approach. So if she goes, right, double forward, there's not much I can do to stop her. But on the way, she always tries to grab as many points as she can, because every point she gets is, well, a point for her, really. Now, for some wacky reason, I thought she might go double right here. Where I got that idea from, I really do not know. Later on in the match, I actually, sort of come to my senses, and I decide to block her off in the whirlpool. So she tries to enter, I made sure that we collide, and that brought me an extra turn on the points. Now, unfortunately, the Blockade Sim sort of went a bit buggy by the time I figured that out, so I won't be able to show you that in the video. But the whole idea is that I was trying to stop Avienda getting to that hotspot. But normally you do that by positioning yourself between them and the points in whatever way you can. I'm going to leave you just with the rest of the video to watch and give your thoughts about yourself. If you do have any feedback, any sort of constructive feedback, positive or negative, that you liked or disliked about this video, please just click the link in the menu on dachimpy.com. It's right at the top. You've got suggestions and feedback. And please tell me what you think of this video so that I can incorporate those changes in the future and make my videos as high quality as I possibly can. Thank you, and thank you for watching.